Chant and dance as much as possible in this human form of life.
Srila Prabhupada, when he was in the Jaladuta on his historic way to Boston Harbor, Commonwealth Pier, when Prabhupada was in the Jaladuta, Prabhupada wrote a few songs. And in one of those songs, in the last paragraph, Prabhupada pens down something very heart-wrenching. Srila Prabhupada writes, he says, Tava kripa hoile mora, katha shuddha hobe, shuniya sabara lokha, dukha je guchibe, aniya cho jadhi prabhu, amake nachate, nachao nachao prabhu, nachao se mate. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Jaladuta, Prabhupada says, he is besieging the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Prabhupada is begging. Prabhupada writes by saying, Tava kripa hoile mora. My dear Shri Krishna, I am on this voyage to the United States. I am on a voyage to the Boston Harbor. But my dear Lord, if you shower your mercy, Tava kripa hoile mora, if you shower your mercy on me, then what will happen? Katha shuddha have. Then whatever I attempt to speak in the United States, whatever I make an endeavor to speak in that country, that katha will become shuddha. My dear Lord, this will happen only when you empower me. My dear Lord, this will happen only when you shower your mercy. If your mercy is there, then my katha that I endeavor to speak will become shuddha. It will become pure. And then what will happen? When the katha becomes shuddha, Prabhupada writes, Shuniya sabara loka. And all the people who come there, who assemble there to hear my katha, dukha je guchibe, their dukha, their sorrow, their lamentation, their anxiety, their bewilderment will be completely taken away. It will be completely snatched. My dear Lord, this will happen when you shower your mercy. And that is when my katha will become shuddha and it will benefit the people of the United States. So with this mood of Srila Prabhupada, I once again beg all the devotees to kindly pray for me so that my katha becomes shuddha, and may this serve as an inspiration, and may this katha take away the hankering and the lamentation that is there in the heart of all the jivas present. So with this, I request for the best wishes of all the devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So as the flyer is already out, and as His Grace Badaraini Prabhu also mentioned, that today and tomorrow, our topic of discussion is going to be about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To the best of our ability, we will try to meditate on these beautiful pastimes and tattva, philosophical deliberations, and the beautiful, sweet pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. So this will be the topic of discussion today and tomorrow. As we know that as far as Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastimes are concerned, there are various books that talk about his beautiful Lilas. But if there is a book that comes first to our mind, that is the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat are the most prolific work that our predecessor acharyas have given us. That is the most wonderful literature that they have gifted us. In fact, Narottam Das Thakur, in his book Prem Bhakti Chandrika, he glorifies this work of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He glorifies Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami by saying, Krishnadas Kaviraj Rasika Bhaktamaj Jeho Kaila Chaitanya Charita. Our Narottam Das Thakur is saying, who is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Krishnadas Kaviraj Rasika Bhaktamaj. Oh, Kaviraj Goswami is Rasika Bhakta. His heart is completely dipped in the ocean of Gaur Prem, in the golden waters of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's Prem. That is Kaviraj Goswami. Krishnadas Kaviraj, Rasika Bhaktamaj, and Jehom Kaila Chaitanya Charit. Oh, he has given Chaitanya Charit. That is Chaitanya Charitamrita. That Kaviraj Goswami, whose heart is completely dipped in the love for Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, has gifted this world with this epic literature, epic narration that is called as Chaitanya Charitamrita. Then he writes, Gaur Govinda Lila, Shunite Galaye Shila. Our Kaviraj Goswami has written Gaur and Govinda Lila. So Gaur Lila in the form of Chaitanya Charitamrita and Govinda Lila in the form of Govinda Lilamrita. Two very famous books that Kaviraj Goswami has written. Gaur Govinda Lila, Shunite Galaye Shila. Oh, these works are so brilliant. The pastimes of Govinda, Sri Krishna, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are so brilliant. Shunite Galaye Shila, that even a stone, if it happens to hear the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the stone will melt. That is the power of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Who is saying? Narottam Das Thakur in Prem Bhakti Chandrika. He says, Gaur Govinda Lila, Shunite Galaye Shila, Tahatena Hoye Mora Chit. But Narottam Das Thakur in utter humility says, a stone is ready to melt hearing the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But alas, 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 my heart is still not melting. Why is it that my heart is not melting hearing the pastimes of Gauranga while a stone is ready to melt? So this is a very strong point that Narottam Das Thakur is making. The pastimes of Gauranga are so sweet that our heart is supposed to melt. If a stone can melt, what to speak of our heart? Our heart is supposed to melt. So in these 2 days, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat, these two literatures we will be taking help of to dive deep into the tattva and the beautiful pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Charitamrita, as Narottam Das Thakur says, is that literature which can melt our hearts. And likewise, even Chaitanya Bhagavat, that is compiled by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Vrindavan Das Thakur makes a very beautiful point. For those who have Chaitanya Bhagavat in their home, in the back page, we can find Vrindavan Das Thakur quotes a very beautiful verse. Vrindavan Das Thakur writes, Manushya rachite nare aiche grantha dhanya, Vrindavana das mukhe vakta Shri Chaitanya. Vrindavan Das Thakur writes, Manushya rachite nare aiche grantha dhanya. He says, oh, don't think that a human has written. A Manushya has not written the scripture. Manushya rachite nare aiche grantha dhanya. Oh, please don't make the mistake of thinking that Chaitanya Bhagavat is written by a human. Who is saying? Vrindavan Das Thakur himself. Manushya rachite nare aiche grantha dhanya, Vrindavana das mukhe vakta Shri Chaitanya. From the lips of Chaitanya, from the lips of Vrindavan Das Thakur, it is Gauranga Mahaprabhu who is speaking. Mahaprabhu is empowering Vrindavan Das Thakur, and that is how he is writing. So Vrindavan Das Thakur, in his humility, he doesn't take the credit, but he gives all credit to Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He says that, my dear Lord, it is not me who is writing, but it is you who is empowering me to write this scripture. Vrindavana Dasa Mukhe Vakta Shri Chaitanya. The Vakta is Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Vrindavan Das Thakur is just an instrument who is writing the scripture. So in this way, whether it is Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavat, they very beautifully describe the sweet pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the Madhya Lila section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there comes up a very beautiful and a very important philosophical deliberation, which is one of the personal favorites of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, who is the spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada. In the Madhya Lila, Kaviraj Goswami, he writes, he says that Chaitanya Lila Amritapur, Krishna Lila Sukarpur, Chaitanya Lila Amritapur, Krishna Lila Sukarpur. He says, oh, Chaitanya Lila Amritapur. Chaitanya Lila is like condensed milk. And Krishna Lila Sukarpur. And our Krishna Lila is like camphor. So Mahaprabhu's pastimes are compared to a condensed milk, while Krishna's pastimes are compared to camphor. And Dui mili hoye sumadhurya, Dui mili hoye sumadhurya. And when these two pastimes come together, what happens? Hoye sumadhurya. The ecstasy, the sweetness just increases. Krishna Lila and Gaur Lila, when we study individually, they are very sweet, no doubt. But when these two Leelas are studied back and forth, when Krishna Lila is studied in accordance to Gaur Lila, and when Gaur Lila is studied in relation to Krishna Lila, Kaviraj Goswami says the sweetness just increases multiple times. Dui mili hoye sumadhurya. The sweetness just increases when these two Leelas are understood simultaneously, side by side. And dear devotees, for that reason, our Acharyas make a very interesting point. They say that Gaur Lila is called as Parishisht Lila. Now, what does Parishisht mean? Well, Parishisht means the appendix. Gaur Lila is the appendix to Krishna Lila. Now, we all have seen that in a book, there is a 400-page beautiful story that is presented. But at the end of the book, there is something called as the appendix. So Gaur Lila is considered that appendix, while Krishna Lila is considered the book. Now, very interesting. Why is Gaur Lila called as the appendix to Krishna Lila? Well, because if you see the appendix, is the appendix part of the book? Well, no, it is not part of the book, because there is a storyline that's presented in the book, and the appendix has nothing to do with the storyline. The story can be studied independent of the appendix. So in one context, the appendix has nothing to do with the book, with the storyline. But if we see the question again, is the appendix part of the book? Oh, well, yes, the appendix is part of the book, because there are few terminologies that are present in the book, which when studied through the appendix can help us understand the book further. I just reiterate this point. We have a book and we have an appendix. Is the appendix part of the book as far as storyline is concerned? No. As far as storyline is concerned, the appendix is not part of the book, because the story can be understood independent of the appendix. While at the same time, the appendix is part of the book, because the story has a few terminologies that can be understood in relation to the appendix. Similarly, dear devotees, Gaur Lila is the appendix, while Krishna Lila is the book. Gaur Lila and Krishna Lila, externally they have no connection, in the sense that Krishna Lila took place 5,000 years back in Dwapar Yuga, while Gaur Lila, well, Gaur Lila took place 500 years back. So as far as time is concerned, there is no connection. So there is Kala Bhed, there is a difference of time. And secondly, as far as place is concerned, Krishna Lila took place in Vrindavan, while Gaur Lila took place in Navadvip. So there is Sthana Bhed, there is a difference of place, and there is Kala Bhed, difference of time. So externally, if you see, there is no connection between Gaur Lila and Krishna Lila. But at the same time, just like the appendix is a part of the book, similarly, Gaur Lila is part of Krishna Lila, because Krishna came down to this world to fulfill the unfulfilled desires that were there in his heart. Our Sri Krishna, Brajendra Nandan Krishna, Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna, Rasik Shekhar, Gopi Jana Vallabh Shri Krishna had unfulfilled desires in his heart, which got fulfilled after he became Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So as far as mood is concerned, as far as bhav is concerned, there is a beautiful connection between Krishna Lila and Gaur Lila. But as far as time is concerned, as far as place is concerned, Gaur Lila and Krishna Lila are separated. So for this reason, Gaur Lila is called as Parishishta Lila. It's the appendix to Krishna Lila. It is part of the book. At the same time, it is not part of the book. So that is why Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making this point that Gaur Lila and Krishna Lila have to be studied together. They have to be studied in accordance to each other. Now the question, how do we study this scripture? How can we get the juice from Chaitanya Charitamrita? How can we get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in our lives so that we can understand the scripture perfectly? And that is answered in the next two lines. Kaviraj Goswami very beautifully he says, Sadhu Guru Prasade Jara Yei Aswade Sei Jane Madhurya Prachur Sei Jane Madhurya Prachur. Kaviraj Goswami says, well, if you have to understand the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then you have to go to a sadhu guru. If you want to taste the juice of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jara Ye Aswade, if you want Aswadan, if you want to taste the nectar of Mahaprabhu's Leela, Sadhu Guru Prasade, go to a sadhu, go to a pure Vaishnav, go to a bona fide spiritual master and submissively learn from him the tattva and the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Say Jane Madhurya Prachur. Only then can we understand the Madhurya, the sweetness of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's Leela. So a very important point is made by Saraswati Thakur and Kaviraj Goswami that Gaur Leela can be understood in connection with Krishna Leela. Gaur Leela is never independent of Krishna Leela. Sometimes we have this confusion that Krishna Leela is separate. It happened in Dwapar, while Gaur Leela happened in Kali. But according to our predecessor Acharyas, they are not separate. Gaur Leela is the continuation of Krishna Leela. It's the fulfillment of the unfulfilled desires in the heart of Sri Krishna. So Krishna, when he was there in this Bhauma Vrindavan, in this world, Krishna stayed for 125 years. Krishna was there in Vrindavan, then he went to Mathura, and then he happened to go to Avanti and then Dwaraka. And then finally, after 125 years, Krishna wrapped up his earthly pastimes to again go back home, back to Godhead, to Golok Vrindavan. But even after going back, our Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna's heart was in Vrindavan. Even after he went back to Golok Vrindavan, his heart was in Bhauma Vrindavan. He could not take the Brajavasis out of his mind. The Vrajavasis are so dear to Sri Krishna that even after Krishna went, he was remembering them. And that is why in the Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, Shukadev Goswami very beautifully opens the heart of Sri Krishna. He reveals the mood of Sri Krishna to the whole world. Shukadev Goswami, he says, Aham bhakta paradhino ya swatantra iva dvija sadhu bir grastardayam bhakter bhakta jana priya. Canto 9, chapter 4, text 68, Srimad Bhagavatam. Very beautifully, Shukadev Goswami is making this point that Aham Bhakta Paradhino. Krishna is saying that I am subordinate to my devotees. We know that the word Adhin means to be subordinate. But Krishna is not using the word Adhin. Krishna is using the word Paradhin, which means Krishna is saying, I am completely subordinate to the love of my devotees. Aham Bhakta Paradhino. And then he says, Hya Swatantra Iva Dvija. He says, I am aswatantra. I am not independent. I am completely dependent. I am completely dependent on the love of my devotees. I'm completely dependent on the sadhus. Now, this is very interesting. Krishna is using the word asvatantra, which means he's not independent. Now, if we go a few cantos earlier, the first canto, first chapter, first verse, the Supreme Lord, he says, Janmadyasya yatonmayaditaratas charteshu abhigya swarat. Krishna there uses the word swarat, which means he's completely independent. But 9 cantos later, we understand that Krishna is not independent, but he is dependent, and he is dependent on the love of his pure devotees. The pure devotees are completely controlling Krishna, and Krishna is loving to be controlled by his pure devotees. He says, Ya aswatantra ivadvaja. I am not swatantra, I am aswatantra, I am dependent on my pure devotees. Sadhubir grastha hridayam. We see this word grastha is generally used in astrology. They say, oh, this person is graha grastha, which means he's completely controlled by the planets. Whether it is Jupiter or whether it is Saturn, we see this person is graha grastha. It is the planets who is controlling him. So Krishna uses the same word here. He says, Sadhubir grastha hridayam. Krishna says, I am also controlled, but the planet who is controlling me is sadhu. Sadhubir grastha. The sadhus are completely controlling me. Bhakter bhakta janapriya. The bhakta, the devotees are always there in my heart, and in their heart I always reside. So very beautifully Krishna is emphasizing this point that I am the servant of my devotees. And even after going back, Krishna's mind is absorbed in the loving service that the Brajavasis have offered him. And very interestingly, we find this is the same mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has the same mood of Gopi Bhartur Padakamali or Dasa, Das, Das Anudas, to be the servant of the servant of the servant. And this is the same mood that Sri Krishna is also demonstrating. So after Sri Krishna went back, he performed all the beautiful pastimes in this world. Krishna was thinking to himself, Krishna was thinking, hey, wait a minute. In the scripture, I said, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham. Krishna very emphatically, he makes this point that the way devotees approach me, that's the way I reciprocate to their love. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham. If someone surrenders 50%, Krishna reveals himself 50%. Someone surrenders 75%, Krishna reveals himself 75%, and so on and so forth. So Krishna very emphatically has made this point that he reveals himself the way devotees approach. But now Krishna was thinking to himself, it's interesting that this logic doesn't work with the Brajavasis. This logic doesn't work with the Braja Gopis, because Krishna is unable to repay what the Braja Gopis have offered him. What to speak of reciprocating to all the Braja Gopis, Krishna is not able to reciprocate to one Braja Gopi at one time in one place. So what to speak of reciprocating to all the Braja Gopis, and then what to speak of reciprocating to Srimati Radharani. Krishna has made this point that he reciprocates, but when it comes to Braja Gopis headed by Srimati Radharani, Krishna is not able to reciprocate. He is not able to reciprocate to even one Braja Gopi, what to speak of Srimati Radharani. And for this reason, Krishna doesn't hold back. Krishna very emphatically, he doesn't hold back. But in the 10th canto, chapter 32, text 22, Krishna, he makes this point. Shri Krishna says, Na pāraye niravadya-saṁmyujāṁ sva-sādhu-kṛtyaṁ vibudhāyuṣāpi va ya mābhajan durjara-geha-śṛṅkhalāḥ saṁvṛścya pratiyātu sādhunā. Canto 10, chapter 32, text 22. Krishna says, Na pāraye niravadya-saṁmyujāṁ. He says, what to speak of repaying, what to speak of reciprocating. Krishna says, I can't even reciprocate to the Braja Gopis in a lifetime of Brahma. Now, this is a very big statement because we know that Brahmaji has a lifespan of 311 trillion 40 billion earthly years. Now, that's a very huge, and he has a very long life. 311 trillion 40 billion years. But Krishna says, I can't reciprocate even in the lifetime of Brahma. Na pāraye niravadya-saṁmyujāṁ. I can't reciprocate. I made the promise that I can reciprocate to everyone. But when it comes to Braja Gopis, headed by Srimati Radharani, Krishna fails to reciprocate to their love. And Krishna doesn't hold back to say this. Krishna very emphatically, he makes this point, I can't repay to your love. What the Braja Gopis have offered, Krishna is not able to repay it to them. Now we see, for example, if I take $1 million, if we take the example of, suppose, Badarayani Prabhu. Now, if I take $1 million from Badarayani Prabhu, not that I have taken, but just for example, if I take $1 million from Badarayani Prabhu and I give him a promise that, Prabhu, I will return this money in a month's time. And then with all trust, with all due respect, he gives me the $1 million. Now, I have promised him that I will give it in a month's time. But now that 1 month turns into 3 months, that 3 months turns into 6 months, that 6 months turns into a year, 1 year turns into 3 years, 3 years turns into 5 years, 5 years turns into a decade. But unfortunately, I am not able to repay the $1 million that I've taken from him. I promised him that I will give him whatever I've taken, but I am not able to repay to Badarayani Prabhu. So naturally, what will I do? If I've taken money from him and I'm not able to repay it to him, naturally, I will not pick up his calls. I will not reply to his messages. And if it's WhatsApp, I will make sure that the blue tick is switched off so that he doesn't come to know I've read his messages. I will make sure that I have no contact with him, because I know if I strike a conversation, this topic will arise and then I will have no answer as to where his $1 million are. So I will make sure that I am not in any proximity to Badarayani Prabhu so that this question doesn't arise. I will make sure I'm not in the vicinity. And I will also make sure that I go to a place that is distinct from where he lives so that this anxiety of taking $1 million from him doesn't arise. Dear devotees, this is exactly that is going on in the heart of Sri Krishna. Krishna has taken so much love from the Braja Gopis, which is way more than $1 million. He has taken so much love from Braja Gopis. He has taken so much love and so much service from the Brajavasis that Krishna is not able to repay. And naturally, when he is not able to repay, when he is not able to reciprocate, he decides to leave Vrindavan. He decides to go away from the vision of the Brajavasis so that this anxiety is not there in his heart, that he is not able to reciprocate. Just like I would leave the proximity of Badarayani Prabhu because I am not able to repay his wealth. Similarly, Krishna has taken so much spiritual wealth from the Brajavasis and he is not able to repay it now. For this reason, Krishna leaves Vrindavan, never to come back. Krishna leaves Vrindavan, goes to Mathura, goes to Avanti, goes to Dwaraka, but make sure he doesn't come to Vrindavan because the love that he has taken from there, Krishna is not able to reciprocate. So for this reason, Krishna leaves Vrajadham. When it comes to the Braja Gopis, when it comes to Srimati Radharani, it's very interesting. Why is Krishna not able to reciprocate to their love? You see, for everyone else, it's very easy. When Krishna says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham, for everyone else, Krishna can reciprocate. Because when someone does some service, Krishna is very happy. And now in reciprocation, that person comes to Krishna and says, I want this, I want that. Dhanam dehi, vittam dehi. I want a house, I want a Tesla car, I want this, I want that. So they come up with a big list, material acquisitions. And they say, Krishna, I want this, 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 this. And it's so hilarious. I'm not joking, but I have seen many people, they go with a list to the temple, to the Supreme Lord. And in a very demanding fashion, they say that, my dear Lord, you fulfilled everything, but number 15 on the list you forgot. You fulfilled everything, but this one you forgot. So make sure you add this to your list. Fulfill this desire also. I have seen people going to Krishna and demanding that they want this. So for everyone else, Krishna can give what they want because they are, after all, material acquisitions. So Krishna fulfills the promise of ye yathamam. But now comes the catch. Now comes the tricky part. This logic doesn't work with the Braja Gopis. This logic doesn't work with Srimati Radharani. Why? Because the Braja Gopis headed by Srimati Radharani, they do so much service to Krishna, and now Krishna is very happy. And now Krishna comes to them and says, my dear Braja Gopis, my dear Srimati Radharani, you have done so much service to me, and I'm very happy for that. What is it that I can give you in return? I am so satisfied. What is it that I can give you in return for all the service that you have provided? Now, when it comes to anyone else, they have a list of material acquisitions. But when it comes to Braja Gopis, headed by Srimati Radharani, they give an answer that is unexpected for Sri Krishna. The Braja Gopis, they tell Krishna that, Krishna, we don't want anything. We don't want anything from you. We do service because it gives satisfaction to our heart and it pleases you. But we don't do service because we have some ulterior motives. We don't want any material possessions for our service. We do it because it satisfies your heart. So Krishna, we don't want anything in return. And this is something that Krishna has not expected. This is out of syllabus for Krishna. Krishna is completely scratching his head thinking, wait a minute. For everyone else, they want material possessions. But how is it that the Braja Gopis don't want anything in return? Now, the trickiest part here is Krishna, when he goes to the Braja Gopis and he makes this request that he wants to give something in return for their service, the Braja Gopis don't ask anything in return. But after Krishna has repeatedly asked that, please let me know if I can do something for you, in return, the Braja Gopis say, if there is something, Krishna, you want to give us, that is service. Please give us more service. We don't want any material acquisitions, but if you want to give us something, give us more service. And now Krishna is happy. Krishna says, okay, tathastu, I give you more service. Now the catch here is the Braja Gopis do service to Krishna and Krishna is happy, but in return, he's not able to give anything. And now the Braja Gopis in return are asking for more service. So now they do more service to Krishna, but again in return, Krishna is not able to give anything. So his debt is increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. So much so that Krishna is not able to give anything, but in return, the Braja Gopis are doing more and more and more and more service. Now Krishna is completely bewildered. Krishna is completely bewildered. With everyone else, Krishna doesn't have any debt. But with the Brajavasis, with the Braja Gopis, his debt is just increasing. Now Krishna has to do something so that his debt can be taken care of, so that he can get rid of his debt to the Braja Gopis. And dear devotees, in the same verse where he says that even in the lifetime of Brahmā, he cannot repay, in the last line, Krishna gives the solution by which he can repay, by which he plans to repay to the service that the Braja Gopis and Srimati Radharani have provided him. In the last line, they say, Krishna says, pratiyātu sādhunā. The Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna, Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna says, my dear Braja Gopis, I know you're not asking for anything in return, but let your saintly qualities be the reciprocation. My dear Braja Gopis, I will take the saintly qualities that you have in your life. I will take all the saintly qualities in myself and may the saintly qualities in me be your reciprocation. Which basically means Krishna is making this point that he will take the saintly qualities from Srimati Radharani in himself And may that be the reciprocation to Radharani's service. Because Krishna cannot do anything else. Radharani doesn't want anything else except service. So Krishna says, pratiyātu sādhunā, my dear Srimati Radharani, my dear Braja Gopis, I will take all the saintly qualities that you have in me, and may the saintly qualities be the reciprocation to your love. So dear devotees, this is the first revelation of Gaura avatar. This is the first revelation of Gaur Lila in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna is making a point that in Kali, to repay the debt, to repay to the love that he has taken from the Brajavasis, Shyam Sundar will come down as Gaur Sundar. Shyam Chandra will come down as Gaur Chandra, Gauranga Chandra. And this verse comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam itself is emphatically making this point that in Kali, Shyam Sundar of Dwapar will come down as Gauranga Mahaprabhu to repay to the service that the Braj of Gopis and Srimati Radharani has provided. So in this way, our Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes down in this very, very dark age of Kali Yuga. And it's very interesting. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears, when he appears as Nimai, we see he appears during the eclipse time. It was a lunar eclipse when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Now, there is a very interesting question here. Why did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appear during eclipse? We see eclipse is not socially considered very auspicious, because whenever there is eclipse, we are told to not step out of the house. Many places the temples are kept closed. After the eclipse is done, we are asked to take a bath, which only proves the point that eclipse socially is not considered very auspicious. So a time period which is not considered auspicious, why is the Supreme Lord choosing that time to appear in this world? Why does the Supreme Lord accept lunar eclipse to come down to this world? Now, of course, one reason that we can state is whenever the Supreme Lord appears, that time is auspicious. Just like Sri Krishna appeared in the dark prison house in Mathura. And because he appeared there, Mathura became very auspicious. Mathura is a dham. Rupa Goswami writes a whole book, Mathura Dham Mahatmya, Mathura Mandal Mahatmya. So that is one way of understanding that whenever the Supreme Lord appears, that place and that time becomes very auspicious. But dear devotees, there is a very deep meaning as to why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears during lunar eclipse. There is a very deep meaning. Lunar eclipse, now for those who are writing down, lunar eclipse in Sanskrit is called as Chandra Grahan. We know solar eclipse is called as Surya Grahan, while lunar eclipse is called as Chandra Grahan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears not during Surya Grahan, but he appears during the lunar eclipse, that is Chandra Grahan. Now, why does he appear during lunar eclipse, Chandra Grahan, is a very fascinating point. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through his appearance in Chandra Grahan, is stating the point, because Grahan also means to accept. We see in Hindi, we say Grahan Karna, which means to accept. And Chandra, well, Chandra stands for Chandramukhi, that is Srimati Radharani. Chandramukhi is one of the names of Srimati Radharani. So Chandra means Radharani and Grahan means to accept. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through his appearance itself, is showing the world that now I have accepted the complexion of Srimati Radharani. I have accepted the bhav of Srimati Radharani. I have accepted every saintly quality that Srimati Radharani has in my life. Chandra, Grahan. Chandra stands for Chandramukhi. Grahan stands for accept. This is the reason Mahaprabhu comes in a time that is socially considered not auspicious, but he comes during Chandra Grahan to show to the world that I, as Gauranga Mahaprabhu, as Sachinandan Gaur Sundar, has accepted Grahan. I have accepted Chandramukhi's bhav. I have accepted Chandramukhi's complexion. I have accepted Chandramukhi's saintly qualities in my life. Dear devotees, this is the reason Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears during eclipse, which is externally not considered a very auspicious time. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in this world for two purposes. Kaviraj Goswami very beautifully says, our Gauranga Mahaprabhu appears for two purposes. What are those two purposes? Prema rasa niryas koriteya swadan ragmarg bhakti loke korite pracharan rasikha shekhara krishna parama karuna ei dui hetu hoite ichhara udgama. Ei dui hetu hoite ichhara udgama. There were two desires that manifested in the heart of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. What were the two desires? First, prema rasa niryas koriteya swadan. The Supreme Lord wanted to taste the fruit. He wanted to taste the love of Srimati Radharani. He wanted to see from the eyes of Srimati Radharani as to what she feels when she sees Krishna. So the first reason Gauranga Mahaprabhu appears is to taste the love of Srimati Radharani. And second, Ragmarg Bhakti Loke Korite Pracharan. The Supreme Lord, the second reason why he appears is Pracharan, to preach that love. So first, he comes down to taste the love, and second, he comes to preach that love. But an interesting point, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is tasting this love for the first time. He has not tasted Radharani's love before. As Shyama Sundar Shri Krishna, he has only seen Radharani, but this is the first time he's seeing from the eyes of Srimati Radharani. So Krishna has not tasted the love of Srimati Radharani. This is the first time he's doing it. So what if he forgets to give it out? What if he becomes so engrossed in tasting that he forgets to give it out to the jivas of Kali Yuga? What will happen? The main reason why he is descended is to taste and to preach. But if he just keeps tasting the fruit of Radharani's love, and if he ends up giving out, then it will be problem for Kali Yuga jivas, because they will not get a path by which they can enter Golok Vrindavan. So now, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't forget this mission of preaching, and so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can be focused, completely engrossed in just eating, our Nityananda Prabhu comes down to this world to help him preach. Nityananda Prabhu says, my dear Lord, you be engrossed in tasting the fruit of love of Godhead. I will share that love with everyone else. My dear Lord, you don't worry. I will give that love to everyone else. You can taste the fruit. I will give it to everyone else. In this mood, dear devotees, Shyama Sundar comes down as Gaura Sundar, and Balaram comes down as Nityananda Prabhu. Brajendra Nandana Jai Sachi Suta Hoilo Se Balarama Hoilo Nitai Balarama Hoilo Nitai. Brajendra Nandan, Shri Krishna, has now become Nimai. He has now become Gauranga Mahaprabhu, while Balaram has now become Nityananda Prabhu. And Nityananda Prabhu is coming down to help preach that love so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can be one-pointed. He can be engrossed in just tasting the fruit. Now, dear devotees, the question arises, how is Nityananda Prabhu giving out? How is he preaching this love of Godhead? Nityananda Prabhu is giving out this message by the loud congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Our Nityananda Prabhu, who is Adi Guru, has opened the marketplace of the holy name. He has flooded every town and village with the nectar of the holy name. This holy name is nothing but the means that can help us taste the fruit of love of Godhead. This is how Nityananda Prabhu is giving us the means to taste the exact same fruit that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is tasting. And what is Nityananda Prabhu asking in return? Is he asking for $10 million? Well, no. Nityananda Prabhu is not asking for anything in return. The only thing Nityananda Prabhu is asking is faith. Shraddhavan jana hai, Shraddhavan jana hai. Nityananda Prabhu says, my dear brothers and sisters, I am not asking anything in return. But if I am asking for something, that is faith, Shraddha. Nityananda Prabhu is asking only and only faith. To show some faith, to show some Shraddha in the chanting of the holy name. This is the only price our Nityananda Prabhu is asking. He is ready to distribute this love of God freely. But the only price he's asking is Shraddha. Shraddhavan jana hai. Oh, my dear brothers and sisters, please have Shraddha, Nityananda Prabhu is saying. So very beautifully, Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he compares Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be like the sun. He says, our Gauranga Mahaprabhu, oh well, our Gauranga Mahaprabhu is like the sun. Why sun? Because we see that one ray of sun, just one ray, we don't even require the whole sun to rise, but just one ray of sun can dispel the darkness that is there throughout night. Just one ray, when it's 5:36, 6:30, depending on whichever part of the world we are in. One ray of the sun can dispel all the darkness that is present. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kaviraj Goswami says, he is like that sun. One ray emanating from the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can completely dispel all the darkness that is present in this age of Kali Yuga. This Kali Yuga, dear devotees, is so dark, where people don't talk to each other, people talk about each other. That is how dark this age is. We never fall short of gossip. We never fall short of chit-chatting. We always have something to gossip about, whether it is fault finding, whether it is criticizing. So that is why it is said, this is that age where we don't talk to each other, we talk about each other. And not just this age is such that the lifespan decreases, the memory decreases, the beauty decreases. Everything in this age just keeps decreasing. There is nothing that increases about this age. Everything just goes down the hill. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is considered that sun who is coming to dispel this darkness once and for all. Srila Radhanath Maharaj, in one lecture in Chapati during the Q&A session, he made a very interesting point. As far as Kali Yuga lifespan decreasing is concerned, Radhanath Maharaj made such a practical point. And this is such an important point that will stay with us throughout our lives. Radhanath Maharaj said that till the age of 50, we are in the green light of the traffic signal. We see in the road, we have the traffic signal. Radhanath Maharaj said, till the age of 50, we are in the green light of that traffic signal. But on our 50th birthday, that green becomes yellow. And now very interesting, this yellow has two characteristics. The yellow color that we see has two characteristics, two prominent characteristics. First one is it doesn't go back to green. There is only one way out, that is red. That's the only route that we can go. That is from orange to red. And the second characteristic, which is even more scarier, is it doesn't stay in orange for long. Which means till the age of 50, we are in green. But at the age of 50, we become orange. And once it's orange, the bubble of human life can break anytime. Only to state the point that human life is very rare, very precious, and the bubble can burst anytime. So the life expectancy is coming down, the memory is coming down, the beauty is coming down. On top of that, there are quarrels. People are hypocritic. Satsvarup Maharaj in the early days would give this example that in the 1970s, during the college, when the students would go to college in the 1970s, when the freshers would enter the college, the seniors who were present, they would just pick two newcomers who are best friends. They would just pick two newcomers and they would tell one of them that you slap him. So the friend would say, why would I slap him? He's my best friend. The senior would say, you slap him, otherwise I will slap you. So now out of fear, this best friend would slap his another friend. And now the senior would say, now you slap him. Now the other friend would say, why should I slap him? He is my best friend. The senior says, if you don't slap him, I will slap you. Better slap him. So now this friend slaps, and in no time, out of nowhere, there is an ugly fight that arises. There's no reason. Out of nowhere, one person comes and sparks a fight between two best friends, and it ends up in a very ugly fight. So Satsvarup Maharaj would give this example, and he would say, similarly, in Kali Yuga, Maya Devi picks up two people. She picks up two living entities and makes them fight, makes them quarrel for no reason, absolutely. There will be no reason, but Maya will just pick up two people from two different areas and they will start fighting and there will be a quarrel. So quarrel, this word in Sanskrit, is called as kalaha. It's called as kalaha. And that age which is filled with quarrel is called as Kali. So kalaha means quarrel, and that age which is filled with quarrel, filled with hypocrisy, is called as Kali. It's so fascinating and so bewildering that we live in a time where people are running hither and thither, helter and skelter, to gain material acquisitions. Everyone wants a car, everyone wants a house, everyone wants a hefty paycheck, everyone wants a nice bank balance, but only to leave everything at the time of death. It's such a precarious situation. If you just give it a thought, not even a single cent, dear devotees, we take at the time of death. And most people end up dying not even thinking about this fundamental aspect as to why this human life is given. What is the purpose of this human life? Is collecting material wealth the only aim? Or should I also endeavor to collect spiritual wealth? Is there life after death? And if there is life after death, where do I go? What is my destination? What is the body I get? What are the parents, or what are the characteristics I have? Any sane man would think about these questions. So Kaviraj Goswami says, to dispel this darkness that is present, not the darkness in the absence of sun, but this darkness that is present in the chitta, in the consciousness, to dispel this darkness, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, like the sun, has risen in Kali Yuga to help all the jivas. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared to the sun. And how about Nityananda Prabhu? Oh, well, Nityananda Prabhu is compared to the moon. Not just Nitya's face, not just Nitya's body, but it is said Nityananda Prabhu's feet is compared not to one moon, not to 10 moons, not to 1,000 moons, but to 1 crore moons. Nityananda Prabhu's feet is as soothing as 1 crore moons. So Nityananda Prabhu is compared to the moon, while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared to the sun. Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Nityananda Prabhu's feet is so cooling that it is like Koti Chandra, crores of moon. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the sun, while Nityananda Prabhu is like the moon. And dear devotees, have you ever seen the sun and moon rise in the same horizon? Never. It is always the sun rises while the moon sets, and likewise, it's the moon rises and at that time the sun sets. But Kaviraj Goswami says this is the first time in Kali when the sun of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the moon of Nityananda Prabhu have risen in the same horizon to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga, to dispel the andhakar that is present in the consciousness. The sun of Chaitanya and the moon of Nityananda Prabhu have risen in the same horizon. So beautiful. Kaviraj Goswami makes this point that Nitai is like the moon while Gauranga is like that sun. And very interesting, we see Nityananda Prabhu when he appears. We spoke about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance in the form of Chandragrahan. But if you see Nityananda Prabhu's appearance, Nityananda Prabhu comes from the place called as Ekachakra. Now it's very interesting. Why does Nityananda Prabhu choose Ekachakra as his place? Nityananda Prabhu could have chosen any place that is present, but he specifically chooses Ekachakra Dham as the place of appearance. Why? Now there is a very strong reason for this, dear devotees. As far as Vedic tradition is concerned, the sun god who is there, the chariot on which the sun god rides. Please hear this very carefully, dear devotees. This is so beautiful. The sun god who is present, the chariot on which he drives, it is believed that this chariot of sun god, on both sides, there are small wheels that are present. Both sides of the chariot has very small wheels. But in the ahead, in the front part of the chariot, there is a very big wheel, a huge wheel that spearheads, that takes the chariot ahead, that takes this Surya Dev ahead. So there is a chariot of Surya Dev which has small wheels to the side but has a huge wheel ahead. And dear devotees, this is the reason why Nityananda Prabhu chooses Ekachakra as his place. Why? Because Nityananda Prabhu is that personality who is spearheading the preaching mission of the sun like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we just made the point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like the sun, and Surya Dev has the chariot which has a huge wheel ahead that takes the chariot ahead, that helps Surya Dev move ahead. And Nityananda Prabhu is that personality who is taking the preaching mission of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And that one big wheel in Sanskrit, dear devotees, is called as Eka Chakra. Eka means one and Chakra means a wheel. That one wheel of Surya Dev which takes the whole chariot ahead. Similarly, Nityananda Prabhu is like that one wheel who is spearheading the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared to the sun. So for this reason, our Nitai doesn't appear in any other place, but he appears in Eka Chakra to demonstrate this point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to taste the fruit, while I have come to distribute this love of Godhead. So Nityananda Prabhu is distributing this love of Godhead, while Gauranga Mahaprabhu is tasting the fruit. And now to help Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have a better experience in tasting the fruit, because this is the first time Gauranga Mahaprabhu is tasting. So because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has a better experience in tasting the fruit, Gadadhar Pandit walks down. Who is Gadadhar Pandit? Well, Gadadhar Pandit is none other than Srimati Radharani. So Radharani personally walks down to this world to make sure that Krishna, who is for the first time experiencing the love of Srimati Radharani, Radharani is personally walking down to make sure that Krishna has a good experience, to make sure that Krishna doesn't make any mistakes. So Radharani, as Gadadhar Pandit, walks down to assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in tasting that fruit, while Nityananda Prabhu is coming to distribute that love of Godhead. And to invite Chaitanya and Nityananda to this world, we have Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya is that personality who invited Chaitanya and Nityananda to benefit the whole world. With Ganga water and Tulsi leaves, he worshipped the Shaligram. Tulsi dala matrena jalasya chulukena va vikriditam sva-atmanam bhaktebhyo bhaktavatsalaha Advaita Acharya said, my dear Lord, you have promised in the scripture that anyone who worships a shaligram with Ganga water and tulsi leaves, I sell myself to them. This is the promise that Krishna has made. So Advaita Acharya, he said, my dear Lord, you have promised that you sell yourself to that person who worships you with Ganga water and tulsi leaves. My dear Lord, I am worshipping you with Ganga water and tulsi leaves. Why don't you descend to this world? Why don't you descend to dispel the darkness of this age of Kali? So Advaita Acharya was instrumental in calling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu down. So that shaligram that Advaita Acharya worshipped is still present. So to reiterate our points, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming down to taste the fruit. Gadadhar Pandit is coming down to help Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have a better experience in tasting the fruit. Nityananda Prabhu is coming down and saying, my dear Lord, you taste the fruit, I will preach the sweetness that you are tasting. Advaita Acharya is invoking these personalities down. And finally, to make sure this process is working fine, we have Shrivas. Shrivas is the embodiment of this process working perfectly fine. So this is nothing but the Panchatattva dear devotees. And this is Gaur Lila 101. This is fundamental aspects of why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and why Nityananda Prabhu and why the other associates, other personalities come down to this world to help assist, distribute and taste the love of Godhead. So in this way, as we mentioned, Nityananda Prabhu is so intoxicated in preaching that he doesn't discriminate. He doesn't see whether someone is qualified or someone is not qualified. Patra apatra na deke sthana sthan, je jahan paye taha kare premadhan. The quality of Nityananda Prabhu is patra apatra. He doesn't see whether the place is qualified or the place is not qualified. Na deke sthana sthan. He doesn't see the place. He doesn't see the person. He doesn't see any qualification. Je jaha paye taha kare premadhan. Anyone who comes in contact with Nityananda Prabhu, he is electrocuted. He is electrocuted in the love of Godhead, because Nityananda Prabhu is carrying that love of Godhead, and anyone who comes in close proximity to Nityananda Prabhu, he is electrocuted in that love of Godhead. Dear devotees, we have heard of the very famous pastime of Jagai and Madhai. Of course, now I will not get into the pastime because it is one of the most famous pastimes that glorifies the exalted nature of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. But there is a very interesting point that arises from that pastime. We know that Jagai and Madhai, they would drink liquor, they would break houses, they would set houses on fire, they would steal, they would trouble everyone. So all the bad things, Jagai and Madhai had ticked the boxes. They had ticked all the boxes, all the don'ts that were there, they had ticked, and all the do's that were there, that was completely blank. So they were the real epitome of how not to be. So they had ticked all the boxes as to what should not be done. And finally, when Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur were on the preaching mission, and when Nityananda Prabhu comes to Jagai and Madhai, Haridas Thakur warns Nityananda Prabhu that, my dear Lord, they are drunkards. There's no need to preach to them. We can preach to those who are sane. My dear Lord, they are drunkards. Let us not waste our time preaching to them. But Nityananda Prabhu is so merciful. Prema matta Nityananda kripa avatar, uttama adhama kichu na kare vichar, jai aage pade tara karo e uddhar, prema matta Nityananda kripa avatar. Our Nityananda Prabhu is so intoxicated in love of Godhead. Preme matta Nityananda kripa avatar. He is the embodiment of kripa. He is the embodiment of mercy. Uttama adhama kichu nakare vichar. Nityananda Prabhu doesn't see who's Uttam, who's first class, who's Adham. Nitai doesn't see any of these qualifications. Je aage pade tara karo uddhar. Anyone who falls at the feet of Nityananda Prabhu is ready to deliver them. This is the mercy of Nitai. He doesn't see any qualification. Krishna, he sees from Dwapar Yuga standpoint. Ramachandra, he sees from Treta Yuga standpoint. We see as far as worshipping Krishna is concerned, as far as holy name is concerned, there are 10 offenses. As far as Vaishnava Aparadha is concerned, as far as deity worship is concerned, there are 32 offenses. And you have 16 upacharas. So there are a lot of rules and regulations. There are a lot of aparadh when it comes to worship of Sri Krishna. And likewise, even for the worship of Ramchandra, the standards are very high. So Ramchandra sees from Treta Yuga standpoint. Sri Krishna sees from Dwapar Yuga standpoint. But in Kali Yuga, Nityananda Prabhu knows that what better can I expect from them? These people are such that they have a 9-to-5 job. Even in that job, there is anxiety, there is lamentation, there is frustration, there is disappointments, there is project deadlines, there is the boss says something, the colleague says something after coming home. There are some other issues. The neighbor says something. So there is a lot of things that are going on. So Nityananda Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they know. So they are seeing from Kali Yuga standpoint. They do not keep their standard very high, but their standpoint is only chanting of the holy name. Anyone who chants the holy name, Nitai and Gauranga, are ready to embrace them. They're ready to accept them into their dancing party. So in the case of Jagai and Madhai, as we know, Madhai became so intoxicated that he threw the liquor pot at the forehead of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Now, dear devotees, the interesting question arises. Nityananda Prabhu is not different from Balaram, which means his body is Satchitananda. Because we see in Damodara Ashtakam, Krishna in the first verse, he says, Namami Ishwaram Satchitananda Rupam. How is Krishna's form? It is Satchitananda. So naturally, Balaram is the first expansion. So his body is also Satchitananda. And Nityananda Prabhu is not different from Balaram. So Nitai's body is also Satchitananda. Now the question, dear devotees, if Nityananda Prabhu's body is Satchitananda, how did he bleed? Because if the body is Satchitananda, there is no blood, there is no mucus, there is no bile, there is nothing of these products. These are material products. But if Nitai's body is transcendental, how did he bleed? There should be no blood in his body. So now it's like a paradox. We say Nitai, his body is Satchitananda. At the same time, we also say that he was bleeding. So how do we understand this? Our acharyas give a very fantastic reason. They say that at that point, when Madhai threw the liquor pot at Nityananda Prabhu at that spur of the moment, he began to think that these drunkards, they are so low class that they will not walk and go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because they have no respect for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they will not go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has so much to accomplish. He has to taste the love of Godhead. He has to taste the love of Radharani. So he will also not come to the drunkards. These drunkards will not go there. But at that spur of the moment, Nityananda Prabhu thinks to himself that if I fake blood, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will leave everything that he is doing and he will rush to the spot. Because the news will spread far and wide that, oh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, your Nitai is bleeding. Your Nitai has been hit with a liquor pot and he is bleeding. And hearing this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will leave everything and rush to the spot. And if he rushes to the spot, Jagai and Madhai will get darshan of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Just imagine, dear devotees, for this reason, Nityananda Prabhu, he decided to fake blood. He decided to show to the world that there is blood on his face, only so that the news reaches Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu comes to the spot and Jagai and Madhai can get uplifted saying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have all heard this pastime, but this pastime is glorious because it glorifies the heart of Nityananda Prabhu. It speaks about the magnanimous nature of Nitai, that even at that spur of the moment, he was thinking of delivering Jagai and Madhai. And afterwards, as we know, as the story unfolds, Jagai and Madhai get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because Nitai pleaded on their behalf. Nitai pleaded on their behalf, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he showers his mercy on Jagai and Madhai. And then later, Chaitanya Bhagavat beautifully describes from Jagai and Madhai, they become Jagadananda and Madhavananda. So much so that they start chanting 2 lakh holy names every single day. 128 rounds. We have all heard of Jagai and Madhai's past, but the transformation that Chaitanya Bhagavat describes is after that day, they gave up everything and they were chanting 2 lakh holy names every single day. And by doing this, they won the heart of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. They got the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the point I'm reiterating is it was Nityananda Prabhu who was instrumental in giving Jagai and Madhai the share of mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which otherwise they would have not gotten, because they will not go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Mahaprabhu will not come to them. So in this way, Nityananda Prabhu, because Nityan Trayodashi is approaching, there are so many beautiful pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu that are given in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat. But for today, we will pause here. It is 8:20 EST. So we pause here for now, only to continue tomorrow from the point where we left off, discussing more pastimes of Shachinandan Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Today's discussion was more of a philosophical deliberation as to why the Supreme Lord comes down and how he plans to repay the debt that he has amassed of the Brajagopis. And tomorrow we will discuss a few pastimes and a few tattvic points of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance in this world. Having said this, I stop here. And if there were any flaws, any mistakes in the presentation, I once again beg at the lotus feet of all the devotees to kindly keep the mistakes to the side and just take the essence. Having said this, I very humbly stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.